Shabbat Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi William Hallbrook, and we're coming to you live from the Shalom Center in Ontario, Ohio. And we want to welcome you to our live stream today. I hope that you're ready for a good word from the Messiah. We're going to get into the word in just a moment, but we also want to take time to worship. And so today, as you see, there is no team up here today, but worship is a very integral part in the season that we're in. So we want to continue that spirit of worship today with Sue and Brian Samuel. They were with us about a year ago, and we want to bring that back to you. So I just pray today that your heart is encouraged and you're lifted up in Yeshua as we lift up the name of Messiah. Amen. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll be right back. So you guys can worship along with, if you want to, you can stand. Hallelujah.
Tracks up, please. Tracks up, please.
Clothe yourself in strength, in garments of beauty and praise. Awake, awake, Zion. Awake, 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 Zion. Awake, 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 Zion. Awake, clothe yourself in strength, in garments of beauty and praise. Awake, awake, Zion. Awake, for evil will not enter, death will not defile. All your enemies are on the run. God has declared it. You will be redeemed, not with gold or oil, but by His blood. Awake, awake, Zion. Awake, 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 Zion. Awake, clothe yourself in strength, in garments of beauty and praise. Awake, awake, Zion. Awake, hear the watchmen's voices shouting as one, as they see the mighty victory. He will bear His right hand for all the world to see. Your deliverer, your God and King.
Rise up.
Rise from the dirt, people of God. Cast off the chains that have bound you. Break out in singing and dance in the streets. God will forever surround you.
Can we stand up and worship?
Awake, awake, Zion. Awake, 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 Zion. Awake, clothe yourself in strength, in garments of beauty and praise. Awake, awake, Zion. Awake, 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 Zion. Awake, 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 Zion. Awake. But you know what? We worship a God who is the way maker. He makes a way in the darkness. He does the impossible. With God, all things are possible. And we are all mishpocha, even that man, even that one, even that lost one. And if you have anyone in your family who is wayward, who is lost, who has lost their way. Just lay them before the altar now. Don't carry that burden on Shabbat, because that burden is His. He said His yoke is easy, His burden is light. Just lay them before Him. Let them go. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Lord. You are the God that restores all things and makes all things new. You can even change our DNA. Thank you, Father. You're the God who keeps promises. So let's sing this. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise God. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Hallelujah. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that every chain, break 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 every chain. Oh, there's an army rising up. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up. Break every chain, 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 Lord. Break every chain, Lord. Lord, set the captives free, Lord. Break every single chain, Lord. Break every single curse, Lord. Generations and generations, Lord. Yes, break every chain, Lord. We break every chain, Lord. We break generational curses, Lord. We break every chain, every tie, everything that keeps us in bondage, Lord. We break it in the name of Yeshua. We break the chains of cancer. We break the chains of cancer, Lord. We break the chains of arthritis, God. We break every chain, Lord. Break every chain, Lord. Arise, Lord. Arise, Lord. In the name of Yeshua. Arise, Lord. Arise and rise, Lord.
right where you're at, I want you to stand, and I want you to hold that word up, and we're going to make a proclamation today. Let's say this together. This is my Father's word. I have ears to hear, eyes to see, a heart that's receptive. I'm not leaving the same today. In Yeshua's name. Amen. Amen. Let's sing this Shema. So we're going to stand right where you're at in your homes. If you'd stand with us, we're going to sing the Shema. Shema is a declaration of faith. And they asked Yeshua what was the most important scripture in the Torah. And Yeshua said, Shema Israel, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is Echad. We love him with our heart, all of our soul, and all of our strength. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, Yahweh is one. Blessed be his name, whose glorious kingdom is forever and ever. Amen. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Ve'ahavta v'reaka kamoka. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. And say the blessing over the word. Baruch hu at Adonai hamvarach. Blessed is the Holy One who's to be blessed, and blessed is the Holy One forever. And all his people said, Amen. Father, we thank you for your word, and we praise you. We ask you to do a mighty work today, Father, in us. As this message goes out and touches many souls in their homes, we ask it in the mighty name of Yeshua. Good fruit in Messiah's name. Amen. Amen. We're going to turn into, let's go into the book of Bereshit 33, Genesis. Again, we want to thank you for joining us today. We have a small crew here in the building, and some have come quite a ways to be here. So thank you all for joining us today. Genesis 33, starting at verse 1. Now Jacob lifted his eyes and he looked, and there Esau was coming. I want you to just pause for a moment on that. Esau was coming. And with him were 400 men. And so he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. And then he crossed over before them, and he bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, and he embraced him. And he fell on his neck, and he kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes, and he saw the women and children, and he said, Who are these with you? And so he said, The children whom God has graciously given your servant. And then the maidservants came near, they and their children, and bowed down. And Leah also came near with her children, and they bowed down. Afterward, Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. And then Esau said, What do you mean by all this company which I met? And he said, These are to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. And Yaakov said, No, please, if I found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face, as though I had seen the face of Elohim, of God, and you were pleased with me. All his people said, Amen. You can be seated here in the building. Again, thank you all for coming out. There's a lot of questions as to what the next step is. Rabbi, what are we doing at Pesach? What are we doing at Passover? Just, guys, continue to watch. We'll tell you where we're at and what's happening. And we encourage you, there will be, Adonai willing, a Passover service of some type. We just don't know all the details yet. So I encourage you to watch, continue to watch online, continue to go to our website, sarshalom.messianic.com. And folks are also asking about tithes and offerings. You can send them electronically, or you can bring them, send them in the mail, bring them if you want to do that as well. Somebody's in the office usually this week. So let's talk about Yaakov. Let's talk about Jacob and how this pertains to us in today's situation that we're in. How many know we're in a situation today? Wave at me. Let's just talk a minute about Jacob, because, Scripture tells us that the tzaddikim, the saints, All of these things that happened were for us to learn from. Now understand, these people were real people. This is not a make-believe story. These are real people. These are real events. And they experienced the same things we did. They experienced hunger and tiredness and famine and joy and shalom and sadness, prosperity, poverty. These people went through it all. I want you to understand that Jacob is really a type and shadow of the picture of the believer, of you and I. Jacob was a real person. You have to understand the concept of Jacob, what he went through. Let's review Jacob's life briefly. And I'm not going to keep you long today. I felt the message wouldn't be as long as usual. But I want to share something with you today, a very important message about Jacob. Everyone say Yaakov. Jacob, if you study the history of Jacob, his name, Yaakov, it is a yod in Hebrew with akov. It means heel grabber. It means contender. Everyone say contender. So when we study about Jacob, Jacob was one who he understood that if he wanted the blessing, he was going to contend for it and fight for it and get it. Everyone say again, contender. This was in Jacob's nature. Jacob was one he was a fighter, even in the womb, we see. Jacob contended for his birthright and won. Jacob contended for his blessing and won. Jacob was a winner. And so we see that Jacob, if you review his life, Jacob had a brother named Esau. And you know the story. The last time that we saw Esau, if you'll go back, read a couple chapters back, that Jacob was running from his brother. He actually left because his brother threatened to murder him and kill him. And I believe he would have done it if he had the opportunity to do it. His brother was angry. Jacob leaves. Jacob goes to live with an uncle. He marries. He eventually has 2 wives. He has a large family, and he prospers. And now we see that Jacob understands that in his lifetime, he's got all this stuff, but now he needs to go back home. He's got to go cross back into the land. The promise that Adonai promised to give his people couldn't be outside of the boundaries. He had to go back into the land. And so here's Jacob who's coming back into the land. We read in Genesis 32 where Jacob is at the river, and Jacob knows he has to go back. He understands all of the blessing, and he understands all that. He's had an experience with Adonai at Bethel. Literally, he experienced a place where he experienced God's face, so to speak, the angels of God descending and ascending upon the ladder. So this man has had experience in his spirit with Adonai. He knows that he has to go back. There is a river there. There's a boundary. Understand that Israel and the land has boundaries, and there's a river there. And so there's one issue with Jacob going back, and that issue is he has to face his brother Esau. Everyone say Esau. Esau. Esau was a man who represents the world, a worldly spirit. It's actually where you see some of the hatred for Israel today come behind through the lineage down to that brother Esau. Esau hated his brother, Jacob. Jacob knew that. But Jacob felt within him there's a promise, there's a fulfillment and a destiny within me that I've got to go back home. I've got to get back there. So he says, we're going to step by. He didn't say it out loud, but I imagine that he said in his spirit, enough of this, I'm going back and fulfilling what I'm supposed to do. And in the meantime, he has this thought in his head. He has this thing in his head going on. You still got to deal with Esau. What are you going to do when you come to Esau? I mean, think about it. For how many years? 20 plus years. All he's heard in his spirit is the last words that his brother had said to him. He's going to kill him. Mom and Dad told him, you got to get out of here because you're going to die if you don't. So he's been on the run all these years. And he's wrestled with that all these years. He's heard that all these years. Your brother's going to get you. Something's going to happen to you. You're going to die. Interesting that we read that Jacob takes his family and he divides them. He says, listen, what we got to do, I'm going to try to fix this thing with my brother. Now watch this, guys, because there's a message here today. I'm going to try to fix it myself. And so I'm going to send gifts. So here's a whole bunch of camels. In fact, Jacob gets real creative. Jacob says, we're going to send them in waves. How many would like to receive waves of gifts today? Wouldn't that be wonderful? So we're going to send them in waves. Here's a wave of camels. Here's a wave of rams. Here's a wave of donkeys. And here's a wave, and he just keeps sending waves of gifts. He says, you guys do this, and maybe that'll appease my brother. Maybe that'll calm him down. Maybe that'll do something. Jacob's always one who's trying to figure out how to do it. Listen, Jacob is very successful in life. You need to understand that. He has the blessing. The hand of Adonai is upon Jacob. He's got the blessing. And as Jacob is telling his family, you wait here, I'm going to go over by the quiet place for a while. And when the sun sets, Jacob is by himself. I imagine that Jacob had many thoughts running through his mind. Think about that. What would you have thought? What's going to happen? How's Esau going to react? How can I get out of this thing? This really looks bad. Uncertainty, anxiety. Even today, as we as a people think about it, Jacob was by himself. You talk about social isolation. Jacob was by himself. And he's in a quiet place. He thought he was by himself. And sometimes when we get by ourselves, all of these thoughts go through our head. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? The thoughts of uncertainty. But how many of you know if Adonai is for you, who can be against you? Do you know that today? Right now we're in a season where even in Ohio, the thoughts, people are by themselves. They're cooped up in their houses. They're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to go out. All the restaurants are shut down. Kind of strange. Very, very strange. They're only letting you go out for groceries and medical purposes. So the other day I went out to get groceries for my family. And as I was in the grocery store, I'm putting some things in the cart, and I just happened to see the biggest temptation in the world, the big New York cheesecake right there. So I just grabbed that. It was the last one. I put it in the cart. I went up to the counter and I said, by golly, I said, I looked at the lady, I said, if it's the apocalypse, at least I got cheesecake. Sometimes the fear of uncertainty, what's the next step? What's going to happen? Just like Jacob with Esau. What's going to happen? We wrestle. Listen, guys, that's probably the worst thing that people wrestle with is the fear of uncertainty. I've lost my job. What am I going to do? Somebody may have lost their mate or their spouse. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with that? And we wrestle with that. I want to ask you, I've never done this before, but I want to ask you if you're at home, I want you to take a pen and a paper, and I want you to give you just a moment. I want you to write something down. The fear of uncertainty, those things that happen in life that, this was a quick thing that Adonai was doing in Jacob's life. And all of a sudden, Adonai shows up on the scene. So now Jacob is not alone. Now he's wrestling. I want you to think about that fear of uncertainty, that what people are going through right now in the state of Ohio, in the United States, even in other countries. I received an email from a dear missionary friend. If she's watching, Shalom, she emailed me and said, Rabbi, she said, times are tough in South Africa. Times are tough. She said, she said, the president, she said, we watched as the president got on national TV, and she said, he addressed the country. And she said, as he addressed the country, he's calling up the troops. She said, my son and my husband are both in the army. And she said, as he's calling up the troops and as he's ending his broadcast on TV, both the son and the husband stood up and saluted. And she said, Rabbi, she said, we've taken a huge financial hit. What are we going to do? But I know that Adonai's in control. The suddenlies, the uncertainties, what are we going to do? I want to ask you to write down something as I've asked you to get a pen and paper. My daughter is dear friends she has several friends through the YMJA. And there's a family that I want you to look up on GoFundMe. I'm going to ask you, the Rob Harvey and family. Rob Harvey was a young man who was out in California, a strong believer in Messiah, father of 6 children, and he had an aneurysm. He had a seizure, and he didn't survive. And he's from Tennessee. So you talk about a suddenly in life. Here's a single mama now with 6 kids. Suddenly, uncertainties. What are we going to do? I want to encourage you to support that GoFundMe, if you would. Send what you can to them. Bless their family. I can tell you this. Sometimes things happen in life that we don't understand, guys. Even those places of uncertainty where Adonai is bringing us to places where we go, what's happening? Why are we here? I don't even know what's going to happen in the future. And we struggle. And so now we see Adonai up on the scene. And watch this. Adonai, Yahweh himself, begins to wrestle with Jacob. Wow. Wrestling with Jacob. There's many a teaching on that. But see, to understand where he's going and what we read today, you have to understand the backstory. That here he is now, and he's got all these thoughts and all these ideas. And now this malach, we would say an angel, but it's really a messenger. I believe it's Yeshua. And I believe that he's wrestling with Yeshua, the Mashiach. And he's got him and he's wrestling. And it's interesting because in this wrestling, remember his name is Contender. So Jacob, Yaakov, the contender, has always known victory. He's contended for the birthright and won. He's contended for the blessing and succeeded. He contended with Laban and succeeded. Yaakov has contended with men all his life, and he's always won. But watch this. Now he's contending with Adonai, and he's up against an issue where he can't win on his own. He can't seem to figure out, how am I going to get victory over this thing? Now, not only is he wrestling with anxiety over his brother Esau, now this angel shows up, this malach. When I say angel, I don't mean a created being. I mean a messenger of the covenant. This, I believe, is Yeshua. Not just a created being. How many know that Yeshua is not a created being? He's the Aleph and the Tav. So here is Yeshua wrestling with Yaakov, and now Yaakov is in a situation where he can't figure out. He's always wrestled with the things of men, and he's always succeeded. But now he's wrestling with Adonai, and now he's not succeeding. Interesting. So now what happens? I love it. I love this because we see a situation where Jacob is placed where he is in such an issue in life where in his own strength he cannot win. And sometimes as believers, we are getting ready to cross over into things, and we're getting ready to come into our inheritance and into those things that Adonai calls us into. But we come across something, an issue, a barrier, a fear, an anxiety, something, and we go, man, that's bigger than me. That's bigger than me. We look out today online, you look on the news. How many of you know that this virus is bigger than humanity itself? The virus is bigger. But here's the good news. Whatever you're in a situation today facing, it's not bigger than Yeshua. And so Yaakov, he says, Yaakov, your name is going to be changed. No longer will you be the contender. You will now be known as Yisrael. Israel. Oh, there's so much in that name, Israel. Understand that that's a picture of, Yaakov is a picture of the natural man. Israel is a picture and type and shadow of one who is born from above. The new nature. Interesting that we see Jacob, now he's referred to as Israel, but he still wrestles, you see him still wrestling with that nature once in a while, just like believers do. Now he says you're going to get to cross over into that inheritance. And remember, he's got to cross over the river. Your river represents, if you think about a river, it's rushing, it's a torrent, it's those things that are moving and fast, and it's like a blockage. How many of you have rivers? Those things that come at you quickly. You'll cross over, but not as Jacob. You have to cross over as Israel. Your flesh will never allow, you can never come into that place as flesh. Does that make sense? And if we're born from above, and listen, we wrestle. See, we tend to think that the wrestling is a bad thing. Can I share this with you? Adonai's in the wrestle. He's in it. And he declares us as spiritual Israel. Whether you're a Jew here today or a Gentile who's grafted in through the greatest Jew of all, Yeshua HaMashiach. You understand it's one tree, grafted in. And so we want to come into our place and our destiny, but just like Jacob, we wrestle with the flesh and we say, man, we're up against things that we just really don't understand. How can we get there? And he says, you have to come in first through Israel. You are Israel is what he's telling Jacob. Everybody say Israel. It's interesting if you study Israel, we've talked about that. Everybody talks about Israel, but understand Israel, in the middle of Israel is the word, or the root word for Sarah, Sarah, listen, Sarah is one who endured. That means endurance. So as believers, he's calling us into this place. Jacob's nature has changed. Jacob's name has changed. You have to understand the name means your character. Everybody say character. He wrestles with this guy, and then he goes on to say, I have seen, this place is called Peniel. Peniel. The place, he says, I've seen God's face, Adonai's face. That's where we get the word panim. Everyone say panim. Your face is your character. It's who you are. I love that. I want to encourage you today, and I know I'm all over with this, but I kind of struggled with some ideas about this to bring this word today. But you have to understand that there are some things that'll challenge your faith that only Adonai can conquer. The Adonai in you, the Yeshua in you. And as Jacob, you're going to be up against things that you'll say, I don't know what to do with that. But that's where you have to call on Yeshua to say, help. Because, listen, greater is he that is in us than he that's in the world. Peniel, face, I've seen the face of God and lived. And understand this, let's review just quickly, because your face, panim ha-panim. Face actually is faces. Panim is faces. And the word for face has to do with past, present, and future. So when he's saying that he's seen the face of Adonai, how many know that we serve a God he has seen Jacob's past, Jacob's present, and Jacob's future. And now no longer he says, you're not Jacob anymore. Now you'll be called Israel. Because you're going to have, literally that word has to do with connotation with power in Adonai. The power of Adonai. Trust him to bring the victory about. Amen? All right, let me bring it to the text today. Now we come to the text where he's seen God face to face. He's had a transformation, but now he's got the greatest challenge in his faith. And that's coming against something that's spoken his ear for 20-something years. Esau, your brother, is going to kill you. Now how's he going to deal with this? You ever been in a situation where you said, okay, Adonai, what are you going to do with this one? What are you going to do with it? Israel had to come face to face with another great test, and that was the face of his brother. See, he's encountered the face of Adonai, but now he has to encounter the face of his brother. He's got to come back to that character. Can you imagine? What did he see? How did he see Jacob's face? I want you to think about, if you have siblings, I want you to think about their faces for a minute. What do you see? How do you see them as? Do you see them as kind? Do you see them as loving? Do you see them as whatever? Can you imagine what he saw? Esau's face probably was angry. The last thing that he saw was an angry face on Esau. Now he's got to face his brother. He's heard all those past years with all the success and all the stuff, and now he's got to come face to face with that thing that he's worried about for 20-something years. Fear, anxiety, stress, doubt, worry, all of that is associated with Esau's face. And we are, as believers, we sometimes face those things where we're going to have to face some things and we go, oh no. You know, I shared with somebody, I truly believe that we're in the last days. I've taught this for 25 plus years. I've traveled congregations and I've taught it. I've stood in bimas and pulpits and synagogues and churches around the country teaching the last days. We're in the last days and teaching it. I can remember one church I walked into and I was talking about, this was several years back, and I said the message is on the bride and the bridegroom and the midnight hour. And oh my goodness, we talked about the shofar sounding and the bride being caught away at the midnight hour. I noticed that there was a group of ladies, including the pastor's wife, that started shouting and getting very excited. And I said, what's happening? And they said, you won't believe this, but when we came into the office today, they said, we have a clock. And they said, the clock is it's some kind of a clock that has to do with accuracy. I forget what they call it, but it's not what is it? It's an atomic clock. And so it's perfect all the time. It's never wrong. And they said, we were in there and it was going like this. The numbers were changing and changing and changing. And they said it stopped at 2 minutes to midnight. And the message was on Messiah coming at the midnight hour for his bride. I've taught on this for years, guys. And now we're in it. I truly believe it. I'm not putting a date or a time or a season, but I can tell you this. He's prepared my heart. He's given me the words and being shared with the body of Messiah all over. And now we're here. Now, but the uncertainty of what is the next step? What do we do as a body of believers? What do we do when they say, okay, well, you can only have a group of so many? Now listen, that's not a law yet. People have asked, well, why are we not meeting? Oh, there are several reasons for that. We're not fearful. I'm not fearful of this virus. I believe we have Adonai's protection. For those of you that are watching online, several weeks ago, Adonai put in my spirit, we had the elders call people up and anoint every person in our congregation for protection. Didn't know that at the time what was happening, but now we know why. So what do we do with this next step of uncertainty? We have to face it. Some of you may be out there and say, I've heard people say, I'm laid off, Rabbi. They laid me off, Rabbi. We're in isolation, Rabbi. They won't let me go out, or I can't go here. I can't see this family member. What are we going to do? We're going to have to face this with the presence and power of the Almighty within us and let Him take care of it. But we have to be discerning. We have to be wise. I want to encourage you. This is a great test for the body of Messiah. What do we do with this? Romans 12 says that we honor those in authority. So right now we are honoring those in authority. But there may come a time, guys, where we might have to say, well, guess what? We're going to call a meeting. And those that are fearful, then it's okay, don't come. If you don't want to come, don't come. But there may be a time where we might say we may have to dishonor some authority to say, let's come into the congregation. Right now we're respecting authority. Listen for the season and the time, guys. You may be in a situation where you have to face your Esau. You may have to face those things that come up against you. Israel's faced with an issue that only Adonai can resolve. To his flesh or in the natural, it looks impossible and it looks devastating. But don't forget this, Adonai is for him. And can I say this? The God of Israel is for you today. He's for you. He's not against us, and we tend to worry and be anxious over terrifying encounters. We got to face this. We got to face that. As I was in here praying the other day with the elder, Roger and myself were praying, and something came into my spirit as we were praying. My prayer was for this body, was that every person in this body would come out of this with a testimony. Every person in this body would come out of this with a testimony. And as I prayed that, I saw something very unusual. Now, I know this sounds strange, but in my spirit, I saw it looked like an angel or something, but he was putting testimonies in people's mouths. Every person in this congregation. How many would say you received that today? Well, I know that sounds a little strange. Listen, guys, we're in strange times. The days of us just being a normal, now we'll just kind of settle down and be normal and just, those days, guys, are done for the body of Messiah. We truly are living, I believe, in a day and age where we're seeing the events of the Exodus happening all over again. We're seeing it. So what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with it? It's a challenge. We have to face some things, but I want to encourage you, don't be afraid of the encounters that come. Don't be afraid of Esau. Those things that you're saying, oh my goodness, 20 plus years I've heard, you've all seen the crazy stories of, I say crazy, I shouldn't say that, but those my son would call them cheesy movies. Remember back in the 70s, the Mark of the Beast movies and all that? Does anybody remember those? And we would watch those, and we look back at those now, and we go, well, I guess they did what they could with the budget that they had, But we talk about things like barcodes and marks and all that stuff. I encourage you to watch as we continue our series on Revelation. I truly believe that if we're close, guys. I could go into some details, but we're very close. What are we going to do with that? If we have to stand as a people at some point, you're going to stand, having done all. How many would say you'd stand today? Amen. Trust Adonai. Trust Yeshua. You may be facing something that you don't know how to contend with, how to overcome. Trust the Spirit of Messiah in you. And I love this because I'm getting ready to end with this. Let's look at the last verse, verse 10. See that? Jacob said, I'd seen your face as though I'd seen the face of God. I want to encourage you this morning that whatever your situation is, we thought it would look like the face of Esau. He can take those situations that we've been terrified with for years, and we can see God's face in it. We can see Adonai's face in it. To say all those situations that some of you have worried about all those years, all the encounters of the unknown, all the encounters of the things that you thought were going to take your life. In the end, if you stand in the power and presence of the Almighty, it won't look like Esau anymore. He'll take that situation and turn it around and show you his face. Can you imagine 20 years? Did he ever think that he would see the face of God in Esau's face? What does that mean, Rabbi? That means that Adonai took what was meant for evil and turned it for good. Your face represents your character, who you are. What's the face that you're afraid of today? What's got you afraid? What's got you terrified? What's got you anxious? He'll take the face of evil and turn it around and show his face in the midst of it. Think about the plagues of Egypt. It wasn't fun for his people to be behind doors, to see the locusts come, to see the waters turn to blood, to see the things that are happening to their neighbors. I used to wonder, I never gave it really a thought as a young man how the people of Israel or how they handled that. I was always focused on the plagues. Do you ever wonder how they handled it? Were they afraid? Were they terrified? Everything that, for 400 years, everything they knew was coming to a change, a climax. He'll take what's evil and turn it for good. Let me give you just a few scriptures. Romans 8:28. We know that all things work together for good. Everybody say good. To those who love Elohim, God, and to those who are called according to his purpose. Genesis 50, verse 20. This is what Joseph said to his brothers. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day to save many people alive. What's the issues that we're facing today? This is a season and an opportunity for us to shine as the body of Messiah. Pray for people. Reach out to people. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says Adonai, thoughts of peace, of shalom, not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. We're in some real weird times, wondering what's the next step, what's going to happen. But his promise to us as a people is to take it and turn it around and turn it for our good and his glory. How can you serve today? Maybe you can find a way to serve somebody. Maybe give somebody a call and say, can I pray for you? Maybe call somebody within the congregation that's elderly and say, can I bring you groceries? Can I bring you groceries? We have a team of people. Our ministry team is here. If you need help, you're in the area, call us. Maybe we can help in some way. I have a niece right now. Her name is Emily. I would ask that you pray for Emily. I received a picture of her in her hazmat suit. She's a nurse down in Georgia, and she's working on her first coronavirus case. Pray for her. She's a believer in Yeshua. Pray for her, for her safety. Pray that Adonai will protect his people in the midst. Guys, this is our season. This is our time. Don't be afraid of those things that are coming, but trust Adonai to turn it around for good. How's all this going to end? I wish I knew those answers. But I can tell you this, I know the God who holds my days in his hand. I know the God who holds your days in his hand. And what does he say today? No matter what it is, he's going to take it and he's going to turn it around. But Rabbi, what about this family or that family? What about that? The gentleman who passed? What about that? I don't have all the answers. But I can tell you, I know the nature, I know the face of the one who loves me, and he loves you, and his face is good. His face is kind. He sent his son Yeshua that the whole world may come to know, that they may come to know him. Scripture is very clear. He doesn't take a delight in people dying and perishing, but I believe that we're in a season where there is some judgment to be seen. It's happening. Pray for those people. Pray for people. Love people. Love Adonai and love people. And be strong in Adonai. Be strong in Yeshua. How many would be strong today? Be strong and expect him to do something for you. Because when this is all said and done, I'm expecting to hear some awesome testimonies. And I think, guys, if you really want my opinion on this, I think this is just the beginning of what he's getting ready to do in his bride. Be ready. Be ready. Would you stand with me? I want to say the blessing over you. Father, right now I pray for every individual that's watching me, every individual that's hearing my voice, that you, Father, will, even as that song said, break every chain off of them. Break every fear, every doubt, every spirit of unbelief, the spirit of cowardice. We tell it now. I tell that thing to go in Yeshua's name. It has no business on your people. Father, I pray your word over your people today, that the righteous will be as bold as a lion. So help us, Father, as a people to be bold in the spirit and power of Messiah Yeshua. Amen. Amen. Say the blessing over you. Yivrecha Adonai vayishmerecha Yair Adonai panav elecha vihunecha Yisai Adonai panav elecha V'yesem lecha shalom. And may Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh lift his countenance upon you, be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift his face upon you, shine upon you, give you shalom in the face of Yeshua the Messiah. And all his people said, Amen. Shabbat shalom.